Welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show, where you'll learn how to grow your team today. Join Ken Trupke and his guests as they discuss what works and doesn't work to grow your team in today's world. And now, your host, Ken Trupke.
Hello, and welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show. Leading a single team has plenty of challenges. And in the franchise world, you've got multiple teams. If you're the franchisor, you've got your franchisees, you've got some company stores, and of course, you've got the team back at the home office. Well, my guest today, Adam Sutton, is the president of RNR Tire Express, a rent-to-own tire and wheel concept with stores and teams across the country. And Adam has the additional challenge of stepping into the shoes of his father, Larry, who founded RNR and is a legend in the rent-to-own industry. From sunny Tampa, Florida, welcome, Adam Sutton.
Hello, Ken. Thank you so much for having me on. Very honored to be here today.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. I appreciate having you. So, Adam, let's get right into it. Tell me about what you were doing, what your path was to get to RNR. What were you doing before that, and how did that lead to RNR?
Sure. No, it's a fun story. I'll try to be very brief. But in short, my father founded the company, which is now a franchise, in 2000. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, I need some help. You do marketing stuff." I was very young at the time, and I had two other jobs, but I actually went to work for him back then. And it was my third job. I would come late at night. I would stay till very, very late. Actually, with Vince Ficarota, our VP of franchising, a friend of yours as well. And it was awesome. It was cutting my teeth into that world, and eventually we started franchising, and so we had to start kind of learning about franchising. But I was mostly focused on marketing at the time, and then in 2004, my wife and I actually launched our own creative agency called Red Letter Studios, and so that focused on branding, design, video production. And at the time, new media, which was really digital advertising, websites, et cetera. So I'll pause there. There's another step in between, but it was very fun in the early days, being at the beginning of the company, and then years later, I was able to come back.
Yeah. So you started the firm with your wife. How did that grow? Talk about adding team members and what it was like to build and grow that team, and how big did it eventually get? And then
Sure.
Let's talk about the transition to R&R.
Sure. So I often joke that I didn't make any money until I brought my wife on, because I didn't invoice people, or at least when I did invoice them, I never followed up and collected the money. So believe it or not, if you don't ask people for money, they're not going to pay you. And so she was kind of our studio director. And at the time I was, more the creative lead, sales, account manager. We grew that mostly through work for hires, subcontractors to keep the costs down, and had people across the country. And so we would grow up and scale up or down as needed. But in 2012, I actually partnered that company with one of the world's top digital agencies at the time, which is very early in digital social media with Facebook and Twitter. And that was in 2012. The company was called Thuzy, and I became the CXO, the Chief Experience Officer. So kind of lead project manager, but also creative director. And it was amazing. I cut my teeth in Red Letter and kind of grew up in those years, first working for my father in the early days and my other jobs, but then having to do it on your own. And, the wife certainly whipping me into shape when needed, which was great. And that kind of prepared me for the position I ended up in with a much larger company at Thuzy, working with some of the biggest names, global brands like Microsoft, Disney, Oprah, many more. And the long story short there, it's a really unique company. But in the beginning, it was all digital, but we had clients in the early days, such as Gatorade and Under Armour, that said, "Hey, we love what you're doing on our websites and connecting that to Facebook likes and turning social, experiences into commerce. We do all these events. Is there anything you can do for the events that we're doing?" And we had a handful of developers, less than probably 20 people at the time. We said, "Yeah, we can do anything. Let's do it." And we actually started inventing technology around the event marketing technology space, ultimately be turning it into a SaaS platform, software as a service platform. And I was lucky enough to be a founding member of that, event marketing technology division. And early on in that platform, which became the industry standard, which is pretty cool. The Super Bowl runs on it today, a lot of your US festivals, and some of the biggest events in the world. So it was amazing. I loved it. I had an amazing team. We doubled and then tripled our size. It was a lot of fast, startup growth. It was great for me, but it was terrible for my family. I was being fulfilled in every way, and it really was fantastic. In the event world, your Mondays are Fridays, right? And then when you get back, you're prepping and building things out for the new event. And it was just something that I needed to be home. When I was here at home, I wasn't home. I was on the phone, and I was always putting out fires, which one of my kids thought I was a fireman, because I used to say, I'm putting out fires all the time. I'd explain that scenario. So long story short, all of our families here, I knew I needed to leave, had some job offers across the country, but none of that made sense for my family. And I tell people, I not only love my wife, but I also like her. We actually enjoy each other, and been married 18 years, high school sweethearts. And so really didn't know what to do. And my father called me one day, Larry, and he said, hey, can I take you to lunch? And yeah, absolutely. Let's go. And at this lunch, he said, look, we're at 88 stores with RNR Tire Express. The franchise has been growing, but we're really about to explode. And I need some help with scaling that. I really would like you to come in and basically take over the company. And he said, I can't pay you what the other guys that are offered you jobs can pay you, but you can stay here in Tampa, and I know your wife would appreciate that. So sure. Basically took him up on that opportunity. We now have 175 retail locations across the country in 28 states, with amazing team members, nationwide, that are serving our customers, really focused on creating a VIP customer experience. So haven't looked back since. Been very blessed. I think it's coming up on 6 years, and it's been fun.
Great. So take me back to those. I want to hear the R&R story for sure, and talk about your team and the stores and all that. But when you were scaling the other business, and you said you doubled and tripled the size, I'm sure there were challenges in there. Tell me about some things that you learned, maybe by doing some things wrong. But what are some lessons along the way of growing a team that big, that fast?
Yeah. So, and a lot of the things, as any good or bad entrepreneur learns from the good things that you did right, but also the bad things you wish you could go back and change in time, right? So, really for us, it was about, because we weren't really just a technology company. We a lot of these companies just wanted us to produce the events as well. So we had multiple arms of the business. We leveraged that, right? Unfortunately, but then it became, a con became a pro. We needed internet for our items, because we created technology that mapped to like an RFID bracelet. So if you've ever been to the Disney experience, Disney campus, you've got an RFID, and you can interact and do cashless and all those things. So we had created a lot of that technology early on, and we're creating photo and video experiences that were going straight to Facebook and creating all this, amazing impressions, brand earned media, which was awesome. And but that takes a lot of people. So one thing we did was, we really tried to break down the simplicity of, first of all, the platform, so that it wasn't reliant just on us being the only people that could go in and Coca-Cola calls and says, hey, we changed something in an event. And, now I've got to call a senior person. So we built the SaaS model, the software as a service platform, as a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, right? So anybody could go in, a social media ambassador at Coca-Cola could go in and update the social text, or update the name of the photo experience, or whatever that might be. And so that was one way we built in some scalability, so we didn't have to have this mega army of Thuzy certified programmers. And we had some brilliant programmers, but we built it where we could be stacked onto, added onto, and modifiable by somebody that's never looked at a line of code. And so that was massive on the platform growth. We hired a lot of producers, we called them producers for the events. And that was great. Then at an event, you would hire anywhere on a small event, 5 to 10, on a large event, 50 to 200 plus brand ambassadors. And so then we needed to create some easy, high level training and talking points that when we roll up to an event and it's at 7 a.m., the event starts at 8, you've got to explain people what to do, so everything was about breaking down, the procedures into an easy, digestible format so that you could scale and do hundreds of events a year.
Wow.
And
Systems
we
make
put
such
that
a-
in our clients' hands where they could also produce it without us, which was massive for our success.
Okay. Yeah. Systems make such a difference when you can break
Yeah.
things into the pieces that then, and I love how you transition from having to have programmers do things to make it so that anybody, or obviously anybody who's trained, but not a programmer
Sure.
could do it. So you could leverage people and scale people. I'm
Right.
curious, how did you find people? Not just, well, I guess both the 50 to 200 volunteers for the event, the brand ambassadors, but also just the team, the core team that you built.
Sure.
I mean, hiring that quickly, how did you find the qualified people, especially in such a high tech market?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I'm going to give a very practical tip for anyone listening that does produce events. This gentleman who was a client of mine, he ran the IndyCar Fan Experience, which ran on our platform. His name's Brian Fox. He actually created a tool that's the nation leading industry tool for finding what the industry calls brand ambassadors. So if you need temporary staff, someone, they actually have levels of people that are certified in different things, but it's called Trusted Herd. So I believe if you go to trustedherd.com, we have a company picnic at SeaWorld next week where we've went to Trusted Herd and we've got 3 or 4 brand ambassadors. We'll throw them in an RNR shirt, and some of the team members' families are going to think they probably work for RNR, but you just give them a script and they're that smiling face. And it's just a great way to have temporary staff that can be from $15 to $25 an hour, but without having the regular payload. So Trusted Herd, quick shout out to Brian there.
Yeah.
He created a great product. And, but on the other question, there was a couple things at play. We had an amazing founder, this visionary that, you put him in a room with somebody and you're going to capture the vision, a gentleman named Scott. And we also, at the same time, Tampa was really expanding with technology. It's like you see Austin and Utah, we're not as there yet, right? But we've got a great technology base and it's been expanding over the last 10 to 15 years. And so we just found the right people at the right time, word of mouth, of course, Indeed and some of those channels, paying them right. It's great. Some of those folks have now worked for Netflix and Disney and, some of the biggest companies in the world. It's been fun to watch them succeed. And we actually partnered that company. We sold that company to a company called Patron Technology right around my exit. So they're doing extremely well. They do ticketing now and cashless, and really wish them all the best. It's been fun to watch their growth, beyond just the foundation that we built.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, and I love your enthusiasm for the success of the teammates that you had. I think it's the mark of a real leader when you're excited for the success of your team, and
Sure.
you see part of your role as helping them get to their next step in their career.
Of course.
So shout out on that. So I want to
Thank
dig into R&R and hear more about your current team and some of the stories around that, and we'll do that on the other side of the break. We'll be right back on the Clarity Advisor Show.
Is your business where you want it to be, or on track to get there? Clarity Advisors helps business leaders improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success. We specialize in helping you streamline your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Call or text Ken at 616-822-2998 to have a complimentary 12-minute call to see what some clarity could do for you.
Okay, welcome back to the Clarity Advisors Show. We're talking with Adam Sutton, president of RNR Tire. So Adam, you've talked a lot about what you've done before RNR. Now
Sure.
Pick us up the story when you join RNR and what's been going on since then and how you've evolved the team and what the team's like today.
Yeah, perfect. So I mentioned where we were, 88 stores. My father said we're going to be growing. We have a lot of new franchisees coming on board, but also the multi-unit guys growing and gals growing their stores. So we knew that we needed to build a team to scale, right? We really wanted to be proactive and not reactive. So for me, that started with hiring a solid senior vice president. His name is Matthew Warren, who can kind of come alongside our vision and help roll out what we were trying to accomplish over the next 3 to 5 years. And so he and I spent a lot of time together, remapping the next several years, but also identifying and kind of cracking down the mission, purpose, and vision, and everything truly flowed from that. We kind of worked backwards, building out the processes and procedures needed to accomplish a focused but still rapid growth. So from there, we broke down the positions and roles, responsibilities that we needed to accomplish what we call our serve, not service culture. Again, being proactive and creating that VIP experience. And honestly, we couldn't be happier with the team. We've quadrupled the staff. My father ran a very lean ship, to his credit, and they, he didn't abuse anybody, but he'll joke and say he's a little bit cheaper than I am, and I had to twist his arm a little bit and say, no, this kind of growth is going to cost a decent investment. And so we're now 3-4 years into that vision, and we're reaping some of those benefits of prepping the path. And as you know, it's really been a group effort with nobody really needing to claim the credit, and so it's been great.
Yeah. So how big is the team right now at headquarters in Tampa?
So we have 32 corporate staff. I don't love to use the word corporate. We also own 24 stores ourselves. So out of the 175 plus stores, 24 of those are ours. Every store has got about 6 to 7 team members. So it gets up there on the total count, and our home office supports them plus the national franchise.
Sure. Yeah. So talk a little bit about what your role is. Obviously as the president of the franchise with the home office, you lead that, but how do you interact with both the franchisees and those corporate owned stores?
Yeah, I'll be very honest. I don't like using the word honest because it sounds like I've been lying. I'll be very transparent with you. It's difficult. It's very difficult to serve two masters, and I've told both sides this. Selfishly, you almost wish you only had one to focus on so that you could be fully there, because it pulls on you both ways. I don't feel like I can fully give what I need. But the goal or the core there is just to fill in the gaps with smarter people than you, right? That's been me and my father's, I don't know about secret strength, but surround yourself with smarter people. And we've got some great regional directors on the corporate store side, some that have ownership now, owner operators, and they really carry the majority of that weight. You couldn't do it without them. And then on the corporate office side is really having enough that I got tired of the startup world pretty quickly. And so on that proactive side, really not having so many layers just to have titles, because I don't even really like titles, but positions where you've got directors and managers and then just, task-oriented people. So hiring the right people in those positions is the only way I know how to do it properly, and leaning in on their strengths. You asked about my role. Many years ago, about 15 years ago, I read an article on the founder of Cirque du Soleil, which I'm a fan of, just watching them grow and from an entertainment standpoint. And his name's Guy Laliberté. And he said, my new role is just guide. Guide, Guide. I'm not going to be the president. I'm not going to be the CEO. I'm actually going to hire a CEO, and I'm just going to be the guide of the organization. And that's how I've approached, for me personally, trying to juggle everything is not trying to do everything, be all things, all people, but I really look at myself as being the guide for the VP layer, director layer, manager layer. The upside down pyramid is what we really subscribe to. And so just supporting them and stepping in when needed, guiding them when needed, but most of the time watching them succeed. Unfortunately, I get a lot of the credit, but you got to really point it back to them.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I really like that idea of guide, and just from knowing you and knowing the organization a little bit, it's apparent. It's very
Yeah.
much a servant, not or yeah, how do you say it? Serve,
Serve, not service.
serve,
Yeah.
not service. It's definitely a
Yeah. That's
serve
for sure.
culture. You guys are working with and for each other all the time, and everybody's got a "how can I help you" attitude. It's very powerful and very apparent. So,
Thank you.
talk to me a little bit about the franchisees. Now, you've got some one-off store owners out there,
Mhm.
franchisees, and then you've also got some guys that have multiple stores, even double-digit stores. What's
Yeah.
your interaction with them, and how do you support those teams in the field?
Sure. So we do have a few of single store operators, but for the most part, I think we have three single store operators. For the most part, everybody is a multi-unit operator, which is great. But some of that could be 4, 5, 12. We have several over 20, and so with support there, we are we call ourselves Frenchpreneurs, a term one of our marketing people coined because if you rewind 20 years, I mentioned I was a kid, 20 years ago. I'm 40 now to get to, so you can do the math. But Vince and I, VP of franchising at RNR, we were very much like, we got to be more like McDonald's. We got to dictate everything and tell them, this is what you do. And if you know about franchising, McDonald's model, like they're selling you your straws. They're telling you where this, piece of tile goes. And my father was and we were too far, by the way, too far that way. My father is the ultimate people pleaser, entrepreneur, wanted people to be entrepreneurs. And he'll tell you too far that way. And fast forward, when I came back, they'd already really started solving this. And so luckily we were already kind of there 6 years ago. But we've even, tried to lean into it more. We've really found the happy medium, the happy balance there of being just support. For new franchisees, when they on-ramp, we're everything to them, right? We're their lifeline. And, they just don't know what they don't know. And after a couple stores, they're a lot more self-reliant. Your big operators are very self-reliant. We still handle their advertising and do all those things. But I really like to say we found kind of the happy medium. Vince and I were wrong, and Larry maybe was a little bit wrong, but we met in the middle, and we've got a great sweet spot for being the support you need without breathing down your neck, and still allowing for room for creativity, flexibility, and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's great. And I know that you've allowed this, I know that you encourage the store owners and the operators to talk to each other
Absolutely.
and then they experiment a little bit with some
Yeah.
different ideas, and then they share kind of what's working and maybe
Some
what's
of our
working for
best
them.
ideas have come from them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, as long as you bring up your father a couple times there,
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that transition. He's a legend in the rent to own industry.
He
He's
is.
been in that forever. He's very well known and had
Yeah.
very set ways of doing things. And you came
Right.
in, obviously, as we all do, with our own ideas. Share a little bit about that transition and how you've not only grown the corporate team, but transitioned this corporate team from, frankly, the how Larry was doing it to how Adam does it.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And luckily for me, I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world, I think, and very blessed to have an amazing father. I mean, I got to grow up. He owned a previous company in the rent-to-own space called Champion TV. Had 27 stores, a partner with another 100. And I literally, my summers and weekends were spent riding along with him, watching him serve the upside down pyramid I talked about. That's just, he lived it, and watching the way he interacted with his people, the deep care, which I think is one of the most important attributes of a leader, is truly caring, because people will not only see it, but they'll feel it, or lack of, right? And so I was very spoiled early on to have him be my early inspiration of how to be a good leader, number one. That was a great gift he gave me. But another great gift he really gave me, and it's sad because a lot of people in my scenario I talked to have not experienced this, so I feel even more blessed, is he really paved the way of allowing me to have autonomy. And I'm not going to say step out of the way, because he's never in the way, but of not being so set in his ways of saying, no, we're not going to do that, and I'm not going to tell you that we've never had, arguments or a little bit of yelling, very rare, by the way, well, that's just, this is how I got success. And well, this is how I got success. Let's meet in the middle, because we're humans, right? And when we're family. But really, he created an environment, and step back, which I don't know if most people could do, particularly entrepreneurs, somebody that's not only been successful majorly once in his life. He sold that company, retired, got bored of retirement, and started this company, right? But he's older than I am. I'm not going to reveal his age, but mentally he'll tell you he's in his 30s. But you'd never know his age because his energy level, his excitement, and his passion. But what he told me is, I really want to spend more time with our people in the stores, right? And he didn't want to be bogged down with all the handcuffs or the paperwork and reports and what it takes to develop the team with what we did. And so that was my goal. I created an opportunity for him to work as much or as little as he wants. He happens to still work a lot, but he's really focusing on his time on spending his time with the stores and pouring back into people, which is his, superpower. So credit to him. He created an amazing environment. Before I got there, I just built on top of that foundation. Hired a lot more people because I knew we were going to have a lot more work, but it's been amazing.
That's great. Thanks for sharing all that. So I to some extent, it might feel to the audience like, wow, Adam's led a really charmed life. Great dad, great businesses, great success. Everything's right. Everything's up and to the right all day long. We know that's not the case. So if you would share some stories of things you learned by making some mistakes, whether that's mistakes you made or mistakes you saw being made, but what have you learned through people messing some things up? Because it's often helpful. I think you mentioned earlier that we learn, from trial and error sometimes. So what were some errors where you learned?
There's plenty. I don't think we have enough time on this podcast to go through the errors I've made. But I think the key is with any leader, particularly if there's any young leaders listening to this right now, young being any younger than me at under 40, but particularly if there's any young men or women in their teenage years or their 20s, I want you to hear this. It's okay to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. So if you're a perfectionist like me, that's very difficult to A, make a mistake when you're young, and B, admit it, right? Or have other people see it is even another one. But it's okay as long as asterisk, right? Can we add an asterisk later? If you learn from it. And so my thing is I'm okay making mistakes. I want to fail fast and I want to learn from it and not repeat that mistake. So some early ones for me would be, I mentioned I was a perfectionist. I heard this term and it hit me between the eyes about 15 to 20 years ago. Perfectionism equals procrastination. And if any OCD perfectionists are out there, you might be able to sympathize with me, where when you want things to be so perfect, it almost can be paralyzing, where you start putting it off because right now is not the perfect time to do it, or this project isn't perfect to show to the client or to give to the boss or whatever. And it ends up sometimes being like procrastination because it doesn't get done, right? Because it's not perfect. And that was something very early on I had to work with. My wife very much helped me with that. Not that I would have admitted that back then. But that would be a big piece of advice I could tell you. And, I alluded to one earlier that I would just suggest, that any of us have probably seen in the world, but I think one of the greatest strengths a leader can have is truly caring for his or her team. And when that's not done, people feel it, and it ultimately shows in their faces, but that'll eventually show in their performance. And so we just really try to make intentional actions to that. We're very careful and strategic about the words we use. So we don't use the word employee. We use team member, because I like to tell my team, we're not just they're not just a part of our team, but we are a part of their team. And that's huge. That's not the same thing. Right. And so, you see that out in the world. I think that would be probably another woe of, luckily I was, gracious enough to see that the right example for my father early on. If I hadn't seen that, I probably would have been so ambitious and probably would have just run over a bunch of people trying to get to the end goal and left people in the wake. But that's always been something I've just tried to keep close to the chest and keep it a valuable pillar in our leadership style.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Good stuff. I appreciate you sharing those things. To the point of the perfectionism, one way I've heard that expressed is if it's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. Not
Yeah.
go out and do bad work, but just get started and know that before you can be great, you got to be good. And before you're good, you're going to be bad. But in order to be bad, you got to get going. So if it's worth doing, get going.
That's good.
Right? Be bad and move up the chain from there, but get going. So yeah, good stuff. And listen, Adam, I know that you are a learner and a reader. What's some content that you're consuming these days? Either maybe podcasts you're listening to, or blogs that you read, or books that you've read, or audiobooks. What are you taking in these days?
Sure, that's a great question. So for me, number one, I'm always reading the Bible, which I happen to believe has the best foundation of leadership principles ever written. If you want to learn from people's mistakes, go read the Bible. But currently on the business side, I'm also reading a book called Road to Power: How GM's Mary Barra shattered the glass ceiling. An amazing story of, if you're not familiar with Mary's story, how she kind of in a man's world rose to the top and really turned GM around. Set the foundation for where they're at. And when I'm traveling, there's a few others, but I'm usually, if I'm working in the yard, traveling, driving, if I'm not on phone calls, I'm listening to some podcasts. I'm always, someone told me early on, your time is the biggest investment you have. Don't waste it. And you should always be pouring into yourself and getting better. And so I've always tried to do that. A podcast is one way I do that now. So I love, of course, this one. This is in the repertoire now. I got to keep these coming. Our mutual friend Joe Pesci with his podcast. But I really like Wondery podcasts. I think they produce some really fantastic ones. Business Movers is a great one. American Innovations and The Secret Sauce. They all kind of have different angles of looking at businesses, successes, and failures, and it's entertaining. They do a fantastic job. On the personal side, I listen to Mike Rose, The Way I Heard It, and Smartless. So just if you kind of just need to numb out a little bit.
Oh, fantastic. We're going to throw all those in the show notes so people can reference those. That was a great list. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Adam, as we wrap up here, who would be a good person to reach out to? Like what's somebody out there doing that might make sense to reach out to you, and what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. Easiest way, probably, you can find me on LinkedIn, Adam B. Sutton. If you're looking for a great set of tires or wheels, or you need an alignment with affordable payment options, which is really our sweet spot, you can go to rnrtires.com. And if anyone's out there hearing this and you're interested about learning about RNR's franchise opportunities, you can go to rnrfranchise.com. That's the letter R, letter N, letter R, like Robert, Nancy, Robert, franchise.com. So, but if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'd be happy to answer any questions or pass along any info I can.
Terrific. And we'll get those links in the show notes so people can reach out to you. Yeah, it's a fantastic story. You've got a fantastic business and obviously great success with the number of stores across the country. And you're still opening new locations. There's still opportunities and territories that are available. So yeah, if folks are thinking franchise might be for them, definitely go explore that and check out R&R if you need, like you said, wheels or tires for your own vehicle. So Adam, this has been great. It's always fun to get together. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your heart and your leadership style and some of the stories that you've had. It's just fun to get together. So thank you so much.
Look, this was fantastic. I really appreciate you as a human being. I've told you before, you're just an amazing individual and beautiful family. But I love what you're doing on this podcast. So hopefully somebody out there, at least hopefully one person at least, got something out of my ramblings today. But all I can tell you is if you're out there listening, be the best leader you can be. It starts with humility. It ends with gratefulness, and just hire smarter people than you along the way, and you'll do great.
There you go. All right. Good stuff, man. All right. I appreciate you. Thanks so much again, Adam. And that brings us to the end of the Clarity Advisor show. We will see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity Advisor Show. Clarity Advisors is a speaking, training, and consulting firm specializing in helping you simplify your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Connect with Clarity Advisors today to learn more about how they can help you improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success.